Hello and welcome to the chipsgrooveradio podcast. I'm your host, Mike, and today we're talking Naoki Kodaka. Originally, I was just going to do Blaster Master today, but upon doing the research for the podcast, I realized that Naoki Kodaka had also been the composer for two other soundtracks that were on my list to cover in the future. So I decided then to make this kind of like a block episode where I would just take these three titles and talk about them because they're all on my list. They were all on my list, and being composed by the same guy, it's really pretty awesome. So I'm excited to talk about it. I know now why I always considered Sunsoft as the company that made a deal with Satan when it comes to soundtracks, because those guys almost always stuck the landing on NES in that department. Now, knowing mainly Blaster Master and Batman, I had not realized that Journey to Silius was also a title composed by Kodaka, so the man is very good at what he does. From my research, he grew up playing piano and, according to Wiki and other sources, majored in composition as an adult, mainly producing music for radio and television, and then he spent a lot of his spare time in the arcades and eventually landed a job writing music for Sunsoft. He has a shorter career in video games than I would have guessed. He's really only got about a decade or so dedicated to the craft. One thing is for sure, he made his mark with these soundtracks, consistently making top 10 lists or favorites lists that I've seen. Now, to begin, I wanted to talk a little bit about Blaster Master. It was the first game I knew by this man, and it is a little bit of a weird game in America. Apparently, us kids couldn't handle Japanese anime in the late 80s, so the coherent Japanese story of a chosen galactic hero saving an alien planet was transformed, into an all-American boy chasing his escaped newly radioactive pet frog Fred into a hole in the backyard. At the bottom of that hole, a tank on wheels. It drives fast. There's a space suit, a futuristic race car helmet. I don't know. Apparently the localization team decided we're either too dumb to understand a slightly fantastical futuristic story, or they really just wanted to cram one last bit of commentary into our minds about the Cold War and the dangers of radiation. But now that I think about it, it's actually pretty reminiscent of my childhood, because our dad actually had to build an airplane hangar to house all the tanks we dug up. The first thing I will focus on is the first level theme. It begins with a rising theme that kind of blasts off in a way that mirrors the on-screen graphics of your in-game tank taking off at a fast clip, and from there the song is just a fun, adventurous track that you can't help but hum while listening to it. The bass really lays down that triplet backbone that gives the feeling of a motor chugging along. It's perfect. The lead guitar sings a very fun melody, and the hi-hat is also a really prominent component. For as hard as it is for the NES to replicate the hi-hat on many games, and although it is highly featured in the soundtrack, it's not as overbearing as other titles. It's not fantastic, but it's not terrible. So let's have a listen. listening to it now, the volume of the hi-hat is probably a little too loud. It sounds more like someone sanding a table leg than than a hi-hat. But overall, it doesn't detract too much from the song because the melody and bass lines are so fun. This song really is probably the one I think of the most when I think of the Blaster Master soundtrack. It seeps into my consciousness anytime I think of this game, and for good reason. It's just overall a fun song with several parts for how short it is, and a fun little jog at the end to kind of loop us back and bring us back into the main theme. I really like the way the bass kind of gets a chance to play a little bit towards the end of the song. So it has a demonstration of a really solid song construction with multiple parts in a relatively short loop. So Kodaka's already, kind of going full force on this album, and I just love it. Now, Level 2's theme I wanted to cover as well because it feels a little bit more technical. Again, we do have a nice bass groove laying down the back with a nice steady beat behind that lead guitar, filling in the gaps with some style of its own, which really, I think, adds to the song. For good measure, Kodaka throws in a cool effect on the build-up at the end of the measures, which gives the song a little bit more depth and makes it just a little different from everything else on the album. So let's take a listen. Overall, I think this song delivers a similar feeling as the first track. The adventure is there, but there is a hint of danger in this one. With the deeper tones and a bit slower of a tempo, the mood of the level is captured and the danger is displayed in a small way. It's even fun to look at. Just a quick glance at the sound waves in the song and you can see the song has a little more attitude with the attack of the drums, that syncopated rhythm. The bass is delivering a majority of the danger in this song. It feels a bit more prominent than other tracks, and while the double thumping is in line with the drums, it just sends a dark tone. Guitars in this song are a bit more melancholy as well, without being downright sad. The game is really starting to take shape, and you don't even have to be playing it to get that sense from it. I feel like these songs so far have encapsulated the game and the adventure that goes along with it. And even though this is only the second song, the game, the soundtrack itself is taking shape and kind of becoming fuller and more three-dimensional. Now, the third song, in comparison, it takes the opposite end of that spectrum with a much more lively number. It's easily one of the fastest tempos on the album and is just so fun to listen to, especially while playing. We get a song that has, I think, more layers than previous tracks. Of course, we have the hi-hat going nuts in the foreground, but the bass is hitting those octaves in the back, while what I consider to be a woodwind of sorts, maybe a clarinet, is delivering a stuttered and brief main melody. When the music quiets down, the toms snap in loudly to lead us into various sections. It just adds a really cool element to the song. It's really exciting to listen to, and I just enjoy it. behind it all is the occasional synth in the background delivering that alternating scale you can hear for just one more layer. I really like the changes in this song because as a whole, it is just very different and it keeps you engaged. When the song starts, it's fairly subdued, aside from that hi-hat, and then the second measure comes in and the snare drum kicks in. We really get the full scope of what the song is going to be. It's just a joy to listen to and makes the gameplay even more fun. The toms just kind of get their own little song to kind of fuck around in, and it's really nice to hear. Now, compared to other podcasts, I am going a little bit more sequentially than I usually do, but the first half of this album is just so good. Level 4 might be the simplest song on the album, but it has a really cool feel to it with the dark nature of the space it represents. When I listen to it, I get the images of a dark and treacherous cavern in the game. The tempo of the song is also a thing of note. It's much more minimalist than what we're hearing so far. I think Kodaka took another chance with this one. It could have easily been something completely different, and he went with a much slower tempo, a much more relaxed beat, and just something simple, but it comes out really well. The music delivers a nice 1-2 walk the entire time, and at the end of the loop, it actually slows down in a really cool shift just for the hell of it. It was an interesting choice for Kodaka. I mean, I think it paid off pretty well because it helps capture those moments in the game deep inside the earth, blasting monsters, and oftentimes feeling lost. Perhaps that's the most important part is, that feeling that you may not always know where you're going. It's dangerous. It's not scary. It's an action game, but I think he captures that essence of maybe what the character's feeling and going through pretty well. I think it's a demonstration that he wasn't afraid to take chances and try something a little bit different than you might expect, especially for an action game like this. So let's have a listen to it. There's a real hollowness to the synth in this song, too, that kind of waffling back and forth. I think it adds to the song. It just captures the cavernous space of the song, quite literally. I think it was a good choice in sound effects to kind of bring that song a little bit more alive than perhaps it might have been without it. The deepness of that main theme really helps the song trot along. I really like the composition. I think it's pretty skillful in that the melody mirrors that of the tempo by accenting the 1s and 3s. It's an unusual song for the album, like I said, where the others have instruments that feel a little bit more separated. This one does not. It helps the song stand out with the tempo, the unity, and again, that nice slowdown at the end of the loop to just add a touch of more character. Now, of course, it would not be much of a review if we did not cover the boss theme, or 3. One thing Kodaka offered in this ambitious game was that of multiple boss themes, something I thought was very interesting. By today's standards, that's probably a staple. There are different themes for different bosses easily, but back in the day, it really was not a major thing outside of, I would say, a great RPG. Now, before you keyboard warriors rush to correct me, I'm sure I do not have all the data on that. The computer is not done collating, as Ash would say. For an action-centric game, however, I feel like it's pretty rare to have multiple dedicated songs to large enemy encounters. I think it really adds flavor to the game, and it was an unexpected flair when experiencing the game for the first time. I think Kodaka shines in moments like this. Granted, I will say that the first two songs are largely similar with the same instruments and tempos, quick loops, but the point is made. For the first boss battle theme, it's chugging along and ends on a higher note, while the second theme, it begins at a higher register and finishes with a quick double triplet that has a reset feel to it. I think it's really fun. Now I'm going to play both of these back to back so you can kind of see the similarities and the small differences. And they're super short, so I'm just going to dive in. Yeah, so not very complex at all. Just a quick measure and it's repeat. But the point is made there in those songs. I think it's very obvious this is a meant for a tense fight, meant to keep the player on their toes, keep them moving, and sweating most likely. I know for a fact it worked with me as a kid. I enjoyed playing to this and getting pumped up during the boss fight. So this was really fun, really simple, and it does keep in line with the rest of the album. I think that the sound of the songs really stands out. The instruments he used, just the tone. I think it fits the game very well for as intense as it feels. So, from what we've heard so far on this album, as a kid playing this game, I really wasn't sure what to expect when I rolled up on the final boss my first time. Kodaka caps the game off with a medium tempo song with a relatively calm melody for the first half. The lead guitar picks its single notes in a calm fashion with occasional sustains thrown in to accent those key moments, In the second half of the song, however, we are treated to a flurry of scales. It gets really intense. The percussion really picks up to match it. And we feel in our bones that this is it. This is the last boss. This is the end of the game. So it's pretty exciting. The vibe of the front half of this song really strikes me with pangs of Chrono Trigger's final fight with Lavos. That actual final fight where you're confronting the alien inside the shell. This song is much more laid back than other boss themes, and it's really unexpected. Again, I say that talking about an action game, not RPGs. When the guitars and drums kick into high gear, the song does fall more in line with the first two themes I played for you, but it still has more character with the shifting scales. The drums are telling us from the get-go that this song is taking place during an intense moment. The initial guitar licks, however, don't really send that vibe. There's an ethereal value to the song during the first half that I think takes a moment to realize, but as soon as we do realize that delicate nature, the intensity shifts dramatically. It's really cool. On a complete side note, the main boss in Blaster Master always reminded me of the monster in the closet monster, the Trauma movie. As a kid, these two monsters were eerily similar, and I got a little more satisfaction out of killing the boss simply because it was a way that I could stick it to that freaky movie. To end the album, we are whisked away back to the first level in a new arrangement of that theme. It's a beautiful piece that gives that rewarding feeling I talk about in video games. Kodaka implemented everything he's showed us so far in the album proper in this song. It's complete with tempo change, new arrangements of a previous song, a fun melody that picks up in the middle, and that oscillating synthesizer in the background going nuts on scales. Towards the very end, we get a new instrument that sends my mind into, I would call it Mega Man territory. That tempo is pretty much the you've beaten the game tempo for Nintendo games, Sega games. It's really rewarding and really sends the message of a job well done. Your mission is complete, and I think it comes through very well in Kodaka's score for this game. So yeah, that's really all I wanted to say about Blaster Master. I wanted to show you those tracks because the album as a whole is very good. But I wanted to highlight some of the songs that are different from each other and different in ways that are capturing the moments of the game as best they can. Like I try to do with all my podcasts, I want to showcase the important stuff to me and the important stuff I think that kind of helps the album shine as a whole. That's not to say anything else on the album is bad. It's just I want to showcase, the most important things that I think are part of the album. So moving on to album 2 of today, Batman, the Game. It is directly referencing the 89 Tim Burton classic with my boy Michael Keaton. Best Batman ever. In each section of this episode, I feel Kodaka ups the ante on his abilities. If there's one thing Sunsoft games were known for, it's music, period. I stated the deal with the devil joke at the beginning. I think Naoki Kodaka displays talent in each of these 3 titles, but as the years go by, I can see a depth and growth from Blaster Master all the way to Journey to Silius. As the years passed, he dove more into his roots of pop music and electronica, and I think it really starts to take shape with Batman the Game on NES. Even with the title shot and the slowly brightening Batman logo, the song mirrors that on-screen action with becoming fuller by the second. It's just a clever use of the medium to fit what we're seeing on screen to kind of tell us what's happening. The harmonies of the guitars slowly building up gives me the goosebumps. And then the bass and light snare drum kind of fill in for simple, memorable song. Without a doubt, the song everyone thinks of when they think Batman is Streets of Desolation. Immediately, I can hear that growth in Kodaka I was just talking about. The drums are much more refined with that signature NES hi-hat dialed back to a much more acceptable level. The rest of the toms are fuller and more active, and they have a life of their own. He's not afraid to try things on this album already. Even on the NES, we can hear that oil drum deepness of actual toms, which is just brilliant. The guitars sing out a sinister melody that could only be associated with Batman. As you're running around the streets of Gotham, This song makes you feel the danger. Yeah, it's Batman, it's fun, but the music delivers a real seriousness to the situation, and you really feel it while you play. That fucking song, man. So good. Now, the kick drum, partly due to the limitations of the chip, adds a nice poppy sound to the bass. It is one thing I always think of, that punchy, poppy bass drum. However unnatural it might sound, it really gives a signature sound to this album that doesn't detract in any way. Kodaka dabbles in time on this album as well. With Blaster Master, we did have fun, crisp, pretty concise songs. With Batman, we're getting loops closing in on a minute, which is just another bar that he decided to raise, and I think the songs deserve it. It doesn't feel unwelcome at all. The longer this song, the more he can do with it, and what he does, at least with Streets of Desolation so far, is utilize that time by ramping up the tension with each section. The melody here is a little darker. As it plays, images of a darkened Gotham play in your mind, with Batman's bat signals shining in the night sky. Crime is running rampant here, and only you can stop it, but it won't be easy. It's a really powerful song that just puts the listener and player in Gotham City. Period. Now, Axis Chemical Factory comes at us hard with stings. Every instrument takes part in the intro in a powerful attack. Once past the intro, the guitars sing a more heroic melody than perhaps anything else on the album. At the tail end of each measure of the main theme, we get that trademark Batman chorus in instrument fashion. And why not? God damn it, you are Batman. You're kicking the shit out of the Joker's goons and jumping around the room with a surprising ease for such an old system. You are fucking Batman. Once you get past the opening stings and that excitement, as the middle of the song approaches, the guitars and bass slowly rise into that nice finish that ends with the drums hitting like a machine gun and falling right in line with the loop intro. It's just so well crafted. Kodaka and his programmers did a spectacular job hiding the loop. And I think one of my favorite parts is when the song really starts to pick up, and you can almost feel that comic book style of the fight happening, the zip, pow, bang, as ridiculous as it sounds, of that music as it kind of intensifies the second half. I just really like it. And behind it all, in the background, we have a real nice, smooth bass all over the fretboard like butter. Now, if you're looking for more sinister, Underground Conduit takes the moodiness of Batman to a different level. It opens with lower guitar tones that slowly build. The drums in a slightly hurried 1-2 sells the urgency. It keeps the player on their toes and then counts the lead guitar in with a wailing melody. That melody in this song is a little more hopeful, but not overly so. There is a lot at stake when you're listening to this song. The main theme offers that hopefulness, even if it's a little sad, and is intercut with rhythm guitars in a attack-riposte style of back and forth. Those little jogs in between the lead guitar melody are the rhythm guitars with their rough edges contrasting that hopefulness with a reminder of the danger and evil lurking about. I like to think that was pretty deliberate. I think the subdued bass line during that lead guitar melody is to give it that much more power. The bass isn't flying up and down the frets in this song. Sure, it dabbles a little bit during the darker parts, but it really lets that lead melody shine. The straightforward beat of the song also gets a little more active during the darker moments too. A crash cymbal is added in to perhaps add a level of threat to those moments. The boss theme in this game, while much longer of a loop than those of Blaster Masters, falls in line with them in terms of style. We get a nice heavy guitar slide up into a medium tempo with the drums thundering away. The guitars are fairly straightforward, and aside from the little interlude with intense palm muting, offer a simple and fun tune while you're facing off with a big baddie like the Joker. Kodaka uses that rising melody to ramp up the stress while you play, and it works out really well. So not quite as simple as Blaster Master's boss themes, a little bit longer of a loop, and there are more parts to it. So I think it's a step up in terms of length and complexity for sure. And it keeps that intensity of the game going. It fits the theme. There's a brooding intensity, a brooding darkness because it's Batman. And it sells the danger of the moment for sure. Moving on, I want to talk about the ending themes. I wouldn't call it a disappointment to say that the ending themes in this game are short. It does hurt a bit, because as a consumer, I always want more, but it fits the game, and that's what's most important. Expecting a big splashy fanfare at the end of Batman, the dark, moody game, it's full of guns and street thugs, it probably wouldn't fit too well. What Kodaka composes is fairly simple and serene, actually. Encapsulating the darkness of the game and the feel of being part of Batman, namely the '89 film, is the goal with a soundtrack like this. I think Kodaka did a spectacular job. The soundtrack has much less diversion as a game like Blaster Master. It's pretty straightforward, only 4 level themes, but they're so good. He really stepped up his game in a short amount of time. He could have taken the themes from the beloved film and turned them into his own, but he really doesn't do that, and that proceeds to make a darker experience than the film it's based on. I mean, fuck, even the Game Over song is dreary with this brooding intensity. You could easily call it melodrama, but where some would find fault with that, I view it as world building in this case. Kodaka really made it his own and managed to carve out a spot for himself in the world of Batman by doing so. He tried his hand at capturing the essence of what Batman is, and it paid off big time, as this album is on plenty of people's favorites list. Now, time for the last album in my Naoki Kodaka block. Fun fact, I have never played this game. I came across the soundtrack to it some 7 or 8 years ago, and I fell in love with it immediately. As I stated at the top of the show, I had no idea until just before this that it was Kodaka. I'll be honest, in my simple mind, I pictured Sunsoft Studios with a dungeon where they kept all the best video game composers of the generation chained up, the producers laughing and drinking blood from crystal glasses like Dracula. It never even dawned on me that it would have been the same man producing and composing these 3 soundtracks. One man should not have so much power. But Kodaka does. And so do plenty of other video game composers. I'm just having fun. Again, though, I think he has raw talent, and it shows. So the pinnacle of what I know of him is Journey to Silius, another side-scrolling adventure that Sunsoft delivered oh so well. I hear nothing but great things about this game, and I can't wait to actually play it. Legitimately, goddammit. No ROM shit. It is a futuristic space adventure, a standard run-and-gun game, more in the vein of Contra, but definitely a little bit more laid back. The art style is unique and surprisingly fluid. You can really get a sense that the NES era was coming to a close. The capabilities of this system are on full display, and the SNES was set to arrive within months of this game's release. All that said, with the performance of the game at peak NES ability, the music had to be on par as well, and who better than Naoki Kodaka? He utilizes everything from his career to this point here. Electronica takes a step forward here. The compositions just have a hook to them that we haven't heard yet today on this show. The goddamn title screen is a banger. I mean, it's as simple as that. I love the intensity and drive of it. It doesn't miss a beat. The fast tempo lends itself to some playful melodies, and even stops off for a slower, stilted interlude that leads directly into the loop. Each section has a different showcase. The first with the synth and guitar taking the lead, the middle with a deep tone and fun accents, and the breakdown with all the instruments jiving together in a nice walk down. Then the guitar sends the frets into a nice sustain back into the beginning of the loop. It's just fun to listen to, honestly. It's just such a joy to listen to, and for a title screen, it's oddly intricate. But it sets that stage, it's fast, it's catchy, and it has a futuristic feel to it with the electronics. One thing you should note here is that damn bass in the background. It's got a very unique feel to it on this album when compared to, quite frankly, many others on the system. There's a smooth growl to it that just feels a little more refined. Kodaka lets it loose, too. How often does that bass stop down for a killer lick while the main themes are going? It's just a blast to listen to. Now, the first level theme has to get mentioned here. This sells the start of the adventure. I hardly know the game, and listening to this song just takes me somewhere. While the guitars power chord their way to an ominous melody, the bass line in back is surprisingly jumpy and upbeat. It's a nice undercurrent for the darkness of the guitars. That's not to say the song is dark. In fact, it's pretty bright sounding. Even with a slight menace to it, there's a punch behind it, a drive to keep going that I love. It's just such a great introduction to the gameplay, and it really keeps my head bobbing. Another thing to note is on the back end of the song where the lead guitar is registering higher and higher pitches before that loop, and the bass is just keeping the song alive with that fun and upbeat lick all by itself. It really gets its moment in the spotlight even if the guitar tries to outdo it, and getting those moments in the sun with the bass is always going to win points with me. Now stage 2, oh man, I mean, what can I say? With the first notes, I instantly love this song. The inauspicious melody really sets the tone of an underground facility, something to fear, unknown traps and creatures waiting to rip your face off. The bass gets a real gallop in the back of the song that keeps it trudging along while the electronica tones do some belting of their own. Something very welcome in this song is that every time you think the loop is finished, here comes the melody with different sections and very slight alterations on the theme. So the loop itself is actually a bit longer than other tracks and it stays pretty fucking fresh the whole time. I think the deep tones, the low pitch of the song really gives it a sense of dread. The unknown is on full display here for what's coming next. I just love every minute of it. And to make things even cooler, the drums get to really let out some style themselves with the really fun electronic wave synth fading in and out for a measure or two. wanted to let that play just a little bit longer because I thought it important for you to see the changes in the lead melodies. The core of the song remains the same, but the lead sections are always different. That was just 2 examples, and there are at least 2 more. It's just really unique, and it blends really well. I thought it was a very cool addition for him to try something like this, where the main song has the same parts, but the lead section will always be different every time it loops. So really cool. For what the album is, this song shines pretty brightly in the differences it adds to it. There's a real shift in tone from the other songs, and it offers an intensity that gives the game a little bit more character. I think the other songs are definitely cut from the same cloth, but they are more upbeat and have a push behind them, whereas this song really begs you not to take a step further, and that's pretty fun to think about. Now the next song, you guessed it, Stage 3, is really driven by the bass. It has a crispness to it, a slight level above the rest of the album, and with that comes a fun theme. The wafting electronica in the beginning plays as a psychedelic backdrop to it as it marches forward. That lead theme sets the song on a path, and without warning, that pitch bend up into a wild second act really helps it develop a life of its own. Complete it with bell accents and a strong sustained finish, the lead really sings in this one. It's not the best song on the album, but it's definitely a fun listen and takes chances that I think add to the experience. That pitch bend plays into the futuristic stylings of an alien world, something not quite natural, a little disturbing. It's got a playfulness to it as well that is slightly different than the first level theme. The first level, to me, feels a bit brighter, where this one has a definite implied threat to it, and the bass line maintaining that definite tone. Tempo has a lot to do with that as well, I think, and it's slightly slower than the first level, but all in all, it carries some of that same weight. I liken it to Underground Conduit from the Batman soundtrack. The lead has a bit of hopefulness to it, the bass and tempo outlining a distinct threat, however. I really enjoy interpreting music like this because, 1, that's what you do. And 2, the limitations of the hardware just make it that much more impressive to me when it's pulled off like Kodaka does it. The soundtrack marks a moment in time that shows us the depth and scale of his work, his abilities as a composer and arranger of music. He has a real talent to give songs a life of their own and keep albums fresh and entertaining. Journey to Silius is the one game I've spoken about today that I have not yet played, and I immediately wanted to get my hands on it when I first heard this soundtrack back in 2014. That's something you don't forget, and it's also something that has to mean something about the composer. Whenever we get those feelings, we should take a step back and recognize the power behind it, because in order to be moved, or so moved, by words, an album, a sound, it's a big fucking deal. My podcast today was going to be about one album, Blaster Master, because I grew up with it, simply. I had a blast with it, and I always enjoyed the music that captured the experience. It became more than that with some investigation into Naoki Kodaka and noticing Batman and Journey to Silius on his list of works, titles that were already on my list to cover eventually. I made the decision almost immediately to do a show that would center around Naoki Kodaka and his legacy at Sunsoft. When I joke about them selling their souls to always have killer music in their games back in the 8-bit days, I'm totally joking, but it should be said that They almost always nailed it. And quite honestly, from my research, I don't think I'm in the minority on that one. Kodaka's work consistently came up as notable for the era, and I might go so far as to label it as legendary for the NES alone, despite working on multiple systems. It blew my mind even more that a little game I played at an even younger age, Spy Hunter, on our damned Commodore 128, was composed by this man, and I remember that music, however primitive it is, vividly. Now, for my assessments on these soundtracks, I will rate them individually. Blaster Master, make no bones about it, is a great soundtrack. It displays a lot of technical skill, and most importantly, it has great structure. While the album is not as deep as the other two, it does have a distinct sound and an enjoyable set of songs to kind of keep everyone entertained. Kodaka dabbles with tempo changes and building a soundtrack that captures the environments you traverse in the game. Overall, with the short boss loops taking some charm away from the experience, I would have to call it an 8 out of 10. It only loses points for those short loops and a high hi-hat. Dynamically, it stands out from the other instruments. A little too loud for me, but still a great soundtrack. Batman, I think this is where, again, Kodaka started, at least in these three soundtracks, taking some bigger chances with design and really capturing the world. He dives headfirst into Batman and Gotham City with this soundtrack. He could have easily taken cues from Danny Elfman's score, but he didn't. And that's even more impressive because we live in a much different time now. Now movies are being made that reference video games. They're being made about video games. This is back when games were being made as a way to sell a movie ticket. They almost always preferred it reference the film, and not only does the music not really do that here, neither does the game, aside from some beautiful cutscenes. But we're talking about music. I can't stress enough how intimidating this soundtrack is, and it really hits that spot of Batman moodiness and drama. I think Kodaka took the opportunity to deliver an engrossing soundtrack that brings the listener into the streets of Gotham in his own way. It's commendable, and it's officially made it his own. The main gripes I might have about Batman are just that the boss music is a little bland and that the ending themes are too short for my taste. 9 out of 10. Now, Journey to Silius is the next logical step. I don't have anything negative to say about this soundtrack other than I want more. Kodaka utilized everything in his arsenal at this time and knocked it out of the park. It made me wish I could be playing the game when I first heard it. It's so fun and captures the futuristic environments and alien complexes with ease. The risks he takes are simply by trying new things. Letting the bass breathe a bit, using wailing synthesizers and awkwardly welcome pitch bends. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the continually evolving song in the level 2 theme, which allows for that really long loop. The compositions and song construction hits all the right notes and delivers the appropriate feelings to capture any given moment. Anytime I listen to the soundtrack, I'm tapping along to it and humming, a key indicator of great songwriting. Now, I'm pretty sure you know where I'm going with this, even though I was super cryptic in my scoring so far. But 10 out of 10. What a wonderful group of soundtracks to pick apart today. I do want to give a shout out to his programmers who were inputting the music he wrote into the game with his guidance on how it came out. Just like an orchestra composer, if you want my honest opinion, he ran the whole thing. I do encourage everyone to find the games and listen to these soundtracks. Unfortunately, the soundtracks have no official releases, so the best ways to listen are through owning the games themselves or other means, though they are easy enough to find. Naoki Kodaka teaches at Nagoya College of Music now, teaching composition, arrangement, and production, so he is filling the heads of plenty of students with his expertise as I sit here, and to me that's pretty encouraging. I wish him and his students the best of luck. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you're liking what you're hearing, please like, subscribe, rate, and review on your podcast app. Join us on Facebook. Join this discussion the Chips Groove Podcast on Facebook, Chips Groove Pod on Twitter. I appreciate any thoughts, commentary, critiques, whatever you got, throw it at me. Thank you once again for listening, and I will see you next time.